Evening. This is Wednesday and it's Map Show. And I was just thinking earlier today about the idea of that I had many years ago called Map TV. And that was so far-fetched at the time. And just this morning, I realized that, goodness me, for the last 114 sessions or weeks, we have been meeting. And in a sense, we're having our own little TV show. And it's just wonderful to have Henny joining me again this evening, and Gustav. And if you're joining us from anywhere around Africa or Europe or the Americas, wherever you might be on the planet, even if you're on a ship somewhere, let us know. Tell us your name, where you're located, and share your insights and your questions with us this evening. It's just so wonderful to be able to engage with you. And very often, the questions you ask stimulate the panel discussion. And so maybe you are holding the seed tonight for the session that we're going to be having. We're going to continue this evening with the MAPD series. And this particular series is actually a training series and specifically directed to the MAP team. And if you remember the MAP team, that stood for mentors, associates, partners, and directors. And we talked about, and maybe you saw as you tuned in this evening, a banner that said Map the World, which is our mandate. And of course, when the world is mapped, or MAPD, we've done our job. And so I'm talking about the idea of mapped and the mapped series. So last week, I think it was, we talked about how the methodology was mapped. And when I talk about mapped in the context of the methodology, we talked about the fact that it's modular, it's adaptable, it's practical, and it's dynamic. And this is important. These are important features. And I think all of our trainers, coaches, already know that. Modular, adaptable, practical, and dynamic. Tonight, we're going to talk about our approach. And this is something that I've realized, although it's taken a long time to crystallize down to these 4 key elements, I realized this evening in preparation for the session that it is something, it's a strategy that anybody, anywhere can use irrespective of their vision or dream. So I'm going to share these ideas with you, and I trust that as I do, it's going to perhaps give you a solution to tackle that immovable object or that insurmountable problem or that unstoppable force that's heading your way. I don't know what it might be that you perceive as something that's preventing you or lying between you and your vision. Whatever that might be, I hope that what I share with you this evening might just give you an ingredient, perhaps, to set aside the excuses that you've been using that this vision is too big for you, and to begin to proceed towards it with absolute conviction. So what does the M stand for? Well, I'm going to share what it stands for, and then I'm going to explain what I mean, because tonight maybe I'm somebody called me some years ago, they called me a life engineer because I studied civil engineering and I was actually working in something called Map for Life. And they sat there and listened to what I do. And they said, you know something, I think you are a life engineer. Well, tonight, maybe, just maybe, I'm going to err on the engineer side a little bit, if you allow me. And I was introduced to this idea of a matrix, I think, for the first time when I was at varsity. It was the first time I heard the word matrix. I'd seen the concept before, but I heard it and it kind of struck me at one of our mathematical lessons, maybe even something like applied maths, one of those lovely subjects. And the matrix that I'm going to share with you has got nothing to do with the movie. Got nothing to do with the movie. It's a 3x4 matrix. So if you were to draw a rectangle on your piece of paper and you divided it into 3 rows and 4 columns, you would have a 3x4 matrix. So just picture that for a moment. And the idea with the matrix is to use it in the context of territory and structure. Territory and structure. So in today's world, if you have a vision or dream, you might be familiar with terms such as what is your target market? That talks about territory. So when I talk about territory, I'm talking about both physical territory and functional territory. So what I mean by physical territory is this. South Africa, where I live, is a physical geographic territory. It has boundaries, it has provinces, it has districts, it has municipalities. It's divided up in some way, shape, or form, in the same way your country is divided. So the territory, the physical territory, is something that you are familiar with. A functional territory is something like the different kinds of professions. I mentioned already I'm an engineer, but there are also those wonderful people out there, lawyers and accountants and business executives. Maybe they don't fit quite into the territory I'm talking about right now, but maybe they are people that are in the area of education. So they could be doctors, might be, well, they're not in education as such, but I just thought of Anton in America right now. He's a medical doctor and specialist, and he's busy teaching his passion in that part. So he's a medical doctor, but he was also teaching people, conveying knowledge. So when I talk about the matrix, this 3x4 matrix, it's a way to take something big and break it down into small bite-sized pieces. In fact, Map for Life, the very tool, does this. It gives you the opportunity to take a goal that you have for the year and divide it into 12 smaller goals, one for each month. And so that the matrix idea applies right there. But it also applies for physical territory and functional territory. So that's one aspect. As I say, I'm talking to our MAP team, but I'm sure this is something that's going to be of great interest to anybody who has a big vision. The second aspect of our approach, and when I talk about approach, you could also use the word strategy. And the second part is this word over here, is that when you have a strategy, it's necessary to identify certain activation points, certain activators, things, kind of targets that you reach, that when you reach those targets, a certain sequence of events begin to happen. For example, we may have a goal to establish Map for Life in a new country somewhere else on the planet. And the first objective would be to find one person in that territory to say, yes, I would like to be part of Map for Life. And when that one person is there, it triggers or activates a certain sequence of events or certain procedures so that we can make sure that we equip that person and effectively empower them to take Map for Life into their territory. And the activator, or the when I talk about the activation, I'm also thinking from an accounting perspective, because the simple term or the simple numbers that we use to define these triggers or these target or goals in terms of progress are the denominations of the currency you have in your wallet. I've traveled to many different countries around the world, and most denominations of the currency that they have is divided into 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 50, 100, 200, 500, and so it goes on. So this 1, 2, 5 idea, I'm wondering if it has a link to the parable of the talents. So anybody who's read or heard the parable of the talents, you might be familiar with this number 1, 2, 5. Well, in Map for Life, we're using that simple concept as a trigger, as an activator. So all of our trainers, when I say our trainers, our MAP team members know that if they are at a place where they have trained 10 people, their next goal is 20. If they've trained 20 people, their next objective is 50. If they've trained 50, the next objective is 100. And so it continues, because we're just using this 1, 2, 5. And I know that when they've reached a point and they've trained 20 people, there's certain training that I need to provide, because the 1, 2, 5 concept is the activator, the trigger. So we don't need to know what the end is going to be in detail. We just need to know what the next step is. And that's the beauty about having this kind of concept, the 1, 2, 5 activator. The next thing I want to talk about is an interesting concept. And when you're implementing your goal, maybe there's a need to have phases, or perhaps there are seasons that you go through. And if we talk about seasons, we would look at periods of time, perhaps. The example that I have used is the number 7. And where does it come from? When I was in my science class, I still remember so clearly. I had a science teacher. He was like the nutty professor. In fact, his nickname, which was known by everyone and used by all the other teachers, was Nutsy. That was his nickname. And so Nutsy, my science teacher, he did all kinds of interesting science experiments. And one of the experiments, one of the things that he showed us, was that light wasn't actually white. It was made up a whole bunch of different colors. And to demonstrate this to us, he took a prism, and he shone light into the prism from the one side, and on the other side, as a result of refraction, I think, the colors were separated, and we had the 7 colors of the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. I mean, there's even a song that goes with that. So when it comes to our strategy, we're actually using that as a kind of to identify the different phases that we're going through. Right now, as an organization, we're in the green phase. Okay, we're in that phase. We're in the 4th 7-year period. And I used the word globalization for this phase, but I actually think, Henny, that this phase is the mobilization phase. And the result of mobilization will be globalization. But it's just getting people to really connect and say, hey, I identify with the idea of making life purposeful. I want to be part of that. And so we have these different seasons, and I've set for my lifetime, I've set 7 of these phases. Where did that come from? Well, those 7 colors of the rainbow. So we're in the 4th phase. I have 3 of them left. That'll take me to the age of 84, at which stage I will start the next 7-year phase period. And maybe I'll have some input into how that will go. But of course, others will make the decisions as life goes beyond that. And then finally, We have a matrix to divide and conquer, in a sense. So it's about territory, functional and physical. We have these activators, 1, 2, 5, which enable us to set clearly defined targets and to implement different things at different stages as the need arises. We have the different phases that I was talking about right now. And finally, the fourth element in the strategy is the drum beat or the rhythm. And you are probably familiar with this, because if I tell you there's a rhythm in our cycle, our calendar that we use, you'll be familiar with it. So the rhythm is simply 7, 4, 3, 4, 7. You may have heard those numbers already, but the rhythm is just that: 7, 4, 3, 4, 7. There's 7 days in a week. There's 4 weeks in a month. There's 3 months in a quarter. There's 4 quarters in a year. There's 7 years in a phase. There's 4 phases in a generation, and so it continues. 3 generations make a lifetime, 4 lifetimes, and so it goes on. So the 7, 4, 3, 4, 7 is a rhythm, and that's to make sure that if you have a global organization, a global network of people, it's necessary to be able to communicate effectively and get together at precise times. And so the rhythm is important. Wednesday evenings, we have the session. It's part of the rhythm. Monday evenings, there's training. It's part of the rhythm. And so we can get together. I hope that what I've shared with you this evening, this idea of MAPD in relation to our strategy, having a matrix is going to enable you to take that big picture that you have, that big goal, and just divide it down into simple, easy to take steps. I also trust that you're going to be able to look at setting yourself a few simple, easy steps, and you can base them on the 1 to 5 if you like. You can choose whatever you want, but base it on the 1 to 5 concept, and just begin to set yourself some easy to reach targets. And then, because they are activators, identify what new thing you're going to implement when you reach that target. The third thing is to define clear phases that you're going to be focused in terms of implementation, which is what we are doing in Map for Life. As I said, we're in the 4th phase right now. And then lastly, if you want to have a team that works together, but also independently, then you need to have some kind of rhythm, or as I've used the word, drumbeat. Thank you so much for listening to this session. I think the panel discussion is going to be exciting afterwards, because I know that you've got questions to ask. And if your question is aligned with what we're talking about, great. If it's not, even better. So you're welcome to ask any questions, share any insight. Henny and I would love to chat to you, and maybe Gustav will be joining us as well. It's been wonderful sharing this message with you and recording it so that we have it there for future training sessions. I'm going to catch you after this 40-second break. Henny, good to see you this evening.
Yes, good evening. It's nice to be here.
I see you so often. It's almost like we're sitting in the same room now. At least that's what it feels like. I think I must take a photograph of your of the part of your office there, just to the left, and put it as a what would you call it? A virtual background for myself over here. So it literally looks like we're sitting in the same place.
Or you could just send me the green screen. It's probably easier.
Well, I think maybe it's just an opportunity for you just to greet the people that have joined us. I'm sure I saw there were a number of people telling us where they're from. Would you like to welcome all of those people that have joined us on?
Yes, let's start with the closest one, Rian from Mpumalanga, Leidenburg. How's it, Rian? Then, if I look on the continent up a little bit, Sankwe from Zambia. Welcome aboard. Primrose from Zimbabwe. Hi, Primrose. And then Dembe, which I'm not sure where he's from, but welcome aboard,
He's
Dembe.
from Uganda. He's from Uganda. Ronald from
Uganda.
Uganda,
Okay.
right in the northern part of Uganda. In fact, just sorry, Henny, just to try and explain to those people who are tuning in, he's from a town called Arua, and it's on the border between the DRC and Uganda. And the people who may have heard about Ebola and things of that nature will remember the outbreak of Ebola, but they won't know that Ronald lives very close to that environment. So that's where he is. So if you've heard about Ebola, then you can maybe locate where Ronald is this evening.
Okay, perfect. So Ronald is from Uganda. And then the last one, different continent, is Mick. Joined us last week as well. Welcome, Mick. And as I said, Jane from Uganda also joins us. Uganda.
Fantastic. Well, it was interesting seeing Mick's initials on something that we were doing a little while ago. I just saw the MCQ and I thought, goodness me, who else? Because my nephew is Michael McQuirk. So his initials are MCQ, and then I saw Mick, and I thought for a moment that it might be my nephew, but I know you feel young, Mick, but you're not as young as my nephew.
And then the list is growing, which is awesome news. Delmarie is also joining us now.
Great, welcome, Delmarie. Good to have you here, and yeah, please. I think if anybody has a question or comment or so, please post that while Henny and I have a chat. So Henny, I'm going to let you ask a question or maybe share something that just may have stuck out for you, because tonight's been more of a me out of my comfort zone, talking about something technical as opposed to inspirational. I hope I managed to try and marry the two together.
All righty, just before I start, and Gordon is joining us. So we got a nice crowd tonight. It's really exciting. Glen, I think the one thing that stood out for me is what you spoke about is really not different from the Map for Life methodology. It's the same logic that we're following. And for me, that is the crucial thing, is to say it can work in any place. You can actually use that methodology. It is so simple to follow. It follows the same rhythm, like you said. It's just the beat that you need to follow, but it's the same beat. And I've heard before they say that if you've got a business where you sell a product, you need to use the product yourself so that you can actually sell it with confidence. And I think we're applying the methodology in everything we do. The methodology comes through over and over in everything we do, with all the things we have, with everything we do. You just see that same methodology happening again. And what you spoke about tonight is the same methodology, just at a higher level. We started very low in it, and it seems like we're just going higher and higher. So at a higher level, we're still using the methodology. It's still there.
Henny, I see that Gustav is ready to join us. So Gustav, if you don't mind, I'm going to bring you in, or bring you on to into the studio, kind of just into our room. Good evening. Good to have you.
Good evening. Good evening, Glen, Henny, and everybody.
Good evening, Gustav.
It's like we almost make the Val triangle over here.
Yeah, almost.
We're making the circle bigger.
There we go. Gustav, maybe just before we continue, why don't you just quickly introduce yourself and tell our viewers this evening how you got to hear about Map for Life, or when you got to hear about Map for Life.
Yes, I got to hear several years ago, actually, quite a number of years ago. But I got involved in consulting and doing it at quite a high pace, actually, and always wanted to get involved in Map for Life, but running out of time and not making it a priority. So yeah, I'm now starting to make it a priority. So, and I think also, if you tie up with last week's session, that an important aspect of approach is also to make it a habit. We spoke about that last week, and your priority, your habit must be part of your priority. And I still have a challenge with that, because you have different. Being a consultant at this stage, management, business improvement consultant, there are a lot of interruptions in terms of pressure that you have to do some work for clients, and there are time frames also, and so it is quite difficult sometimes, quite a challenge. Therefore, developing that priority, so that let's call it that habit, that it starts become an ingrained part of your life, like brushing your teeth and sleeping, and sometimes you can limit your sleep, you can limit your time that you spend on, for instance, Map for Life, but to carry on with that, even if you limit the time in some cases, but not allowing it to become a habit. And positive self-talk is a very important habit as well, that forms part of the approach.
Yeah, Gustav, I think you're touching on something that many people are saying. Yes, how do I manage that? And you said something really important, and it's just about prioritizing. Because sometimes other people want to, or other people feel like they own us, and so they can call the shots. He who paid the piper calls the tune, kind of thing. And I think we often find ourselves in that place where we have these responsibilities or these obligations or whatever, and they start conflicting with the things that we really want to do. So I think you've brought something up that's very important, and maybe we can talk a little bit about it this evening as well, because you're certainly not the only person who can identify with this thing. But it's a great to hear that you are at least getting to that point where you are able to transition and say goodbye to those demanding clients and begin to focus on writing your book and putting together your degree that other people can study what you've been doing. Henny, I don't know if you got some comments on what Gustav was saying there, because you in the, what engineer are you?
Industrial engineer, yeah.
There we go. Okay, so we kind of have a studio here full of people that have all the answers. So you're listening. Rian's got a comment to make there as well. Go ahead.
Rihanna's got a few comments to make. Yeah, no, we don't have all the answers. We're still learning. Rihanna's making comments. So the first one was, say your nephew is not Map for Life converted yet, Glen. So he's challenging you on that one. Your MCQ nephew.
Oh, sorry. I'm not quite following, but I say he is very much a man who applies the MAP methodology. What was fascinating, maybe I'm going off subject of here, but it was fascinating is as a young person, still as a teenager, he just had this dream that he wanted to go and travel across Japan. I mean, and he had this dream, and everybody in the family said, "You're crazy. You want to go to Japan?" Now, I used the word crazy once on one of our previous sessions, and I got some hate mail. So it's being said in a humorous way for anybody who hears me using the word. But the family thought, "My goodness me, going all the way to Japan, you can't speak Japanese, you don't look Japanese. What are you going to do in Japan? Are you going to get lost?" And he ignored all of the naysayers. And he put together a map, a master plan, and he went and he accomplished that dream. And it wasn't long afterwards he said, if I can go to Japan, I can also travel across Asia, and I'm going to get in a train, and I'm going to travel right from one side of Asia to the other. And he did that. And it's just fascinating to see somebody apply these principles in their real life dreams, and so he's very much a mapper in the true sense that he's applying the methodology and living the dream, which is very exciting to see.
Want to add to that before I continue? Ronald says the audio is off. I'm hearing everything fine. It seems like everybody is hearing fine. Is it just Ronald, or is everybody else still hearing us? Can you just maybe indicate while I continue? Yeah, while I continue, Glen, your question was on to what Gustav said. Yeah, the one thing that stood out for me from Gustav as well is, and it seems like I've got an obsession with the word habit, but the word habit came out again. The drum beat that you spoke about as the D, for me, is also really a habit. It is the way that you start doing things, and if you can get to the point. And I know a difference between people. I think Robin Sharma says 66 days in his 5 a.m. book. It's when you get on that, call it automatic way of doing things. You don't have to think about it. You just do it by default. I think that's what we should be aiming for. But you need to make sure that it's the right habits, because the same thing also goes for negative habits. And I read something about somebody saying their patience is not enough. And they're starting to be impatient, they're actually learning a negative habit as well. So make sure that the habits that you've got supports your purpose or your goal, and make sure that you get those implanted so that you can run it on autopilot.
You're talking about something, Gustav, this whole habit idea as well. I was just thinking, Peter Darrell uses the word ritual. And a ritual or a routine, rhythm. These are all kind of words that are sort of coming or coalescing, coming together in this idea of habit, and I think to a large extent, once something becomes a habit, we become unaware of it. It almost becomes, you work from a conscious state to a subconscious state. Maybe Gustav, you can talk a bit about that, because I think there might be something there related to the fields that you've been working in change management and so on. This idea of, when you start driving a car, at first you look down to try and see where the pedal is, and you're so busy concentrating on that, and then later on in life you drive and you're not even aware that you actually went through all those processes. Maybe you've got some stuff you can share on that.
Yes. If you look at the principle of Bushido, the way of a warrior, like Henny mentioned, they work on the overlap of 3 circles. The one is repetitive actions, like changing your gears. And
let's make Henny that one. Henny is the repetitive actions. It's just a square, but we can imagine a circle there for a moment.
Yeah. Yes. So as the repetitive actions, as you repeat it, it becomes part of your subconscious, and that subconscious starts to overlap with the repetitive action. So you develop muscle memory, and also brain memory. And brain memory part of that is also affirmations, positive affirmations, like an Olympic athlete that affirm that he or she can feel the medal hanging around the neck, and that by the time the person runs 100 meter, in the person's mind has already run it for 1,000,000 times, for instance. So that habit becomes part of your subconscious, and that generates. I'm not a psychologist, but what they say, it generates a cognitive dissonance from what is in your brain and what is where you are actually at the moment, and that creates energy. But then, so that overlap happens more and more. The energy to repeat the almost monotonous type of gear changing, and then also the third element is the ethical element or the spiritual element, and the more that overlaps, the more you become a complete person. If that part doesn't overlap with the other two circles, then you can become a very dangerous person, irresponsive, and even a criminal type of person. And in Bushido, you can become a very dangerous fighter without any feeling for your human being. So that is why the third element is important. And if we take it back to Map for Life, Map for Life covers all three elements, and that's what I like of Map for Life. And so I see the approach of combining all of that, which you covered in the principles of Map for Life also, with the circles that one have to map also.
Gustav, so we're going from 3 to 1, is it like that, and sort of back?
Yes.
So
yes, the three overlaps. The three circles overlap to the extent that it becomes one. When you are a complete person, when that happens, and what happens in Bushido, whatever martial art you follow, if you follow the traditional martial arts, I'm not talking about competitive martial arts. Traditional martial arts, they have their secrets, secret techniques, hidden techniques actually, that they don't share with you unless they are comfortable to the extent of overlap of the three circles. So the more the three circles overlap, the more you are, they will open up some hidden techniques with you, and sometimes very dangerous techniques which you cannot actually utilize in the real life. But it's a matter of trust also, that they know they can trust you because of your way of life.
Now you see, Henny, just the word Japan and my nephew going to Japan, it opens up a whole new discussion. So it's interesting. I felt like I talked about this recently. Henny, you need to just remind me. But I was sharing the story of this concept of muscle memory. Now, before I continue, there's a quote that I heard, and Henny, it might have been a quote from you, because you've been sharing so many quotes recently. But it was something like, I don't fear a person who's done 10,000 punches. I fear the person who's done one punch 10,000 times. I don't know if that was Bruce Lee or somebody said that. Was that you,
Bruce Lee? No, it was Bruce Lee, and it was Mick that shared it with us last week.
Mick, there we go. Mick,
yes.
The MCQ is coming back. So that idea of muscle memory is so important, and I think it's something that we need to emphasize, maybe, because in in Map for Life, what we've established is the Map Club, which is an opportunity. And I know Mick attends our UK-based Map Club, and they have an incredibly powerful weekly session. Heather, who runs it, says that every Tuesday morning, she has a MAP cafe. It's like a shot of 3 cups of caffeine and more. She feels so stimulated and excited about the day ahead. But once a week for 40 minutes is not really going to be sharpening the sword to the level that we want it to be sharpened. And so I'm actually wanting to encourage people to think about, how important is your vision and dream, and what are you willing to put into it? And I think the MAP Cafe, or our weekly mentorship session, is something that you could attend more frequently. And I participate in about 10 or 11 of those every week. If I added in the talks, it would be more. And every single one is different, and everyone inspires me, and we get these different perspectives. So I think we need to start looking at our vision and the preparation for that vision in the same way that a professional sportsman looks at practice for the rugby match or the soccer match that's going to take place at some point in the future. It's practice, practice, practice. And you're not always doing the same thing. There's different things, but you maybe in that process, Gustav, what you were saying is that you're building some form of muscle memory, and you're getting this, in essence, it's a kind of an alignment that's taking place. You're bringing the vision, the action, or what is it? The action, the hope that you're going to reach the vision, and the passion for it. You're bringing all of those together. And when that's nicely aligned, then you start getting or gaining momentum towards that vision. So anyway, that was just something that I was thinking about as you were talking about the muscle memory, because I've experienced that. And it's fascinating how when you've trained your muscles or you've trained your brain in a certain way, it will go into autopilot when you're in a particular kind of situation. And as I'm thinking about that, I suddenly see another side. And that is the power that my upbringing or the environment, the culture, the habitat that I grew up in, the power that has over my trajectory going forward. Am I just going to be another one of all of the people that I've come from, or am I going to be the unique person I was born to be? And I was just wondering to what extent, and does your habitat shape your habits? I don't know if you maybe both can comment on that.
I think it makes a big difference. I think it makes a massive difference. We raised in a certain way, and I think our parents do the best they can for us based on what they've got. But is it always going to be the best, or are they stuck in the ways of the world, if I can call it that? You have to sometimes make changes. If we're stuck in the ways of the world, it means that you're going to study as hard as you can so you can make it to university, so you can get married and have kids and retire one day in a safe space. Is that really your purpose? Did our parents really know what it is to find your purpose, or is this very specific? Has the time not come for us to be the different one? Is it not time to change what is carried over from generation to generation to be very different? Should we not be different in the way we do things? Should we not go and put down a new habitat? Should we not be doing things very differently? See a different vision, make sure that vision that we're following is then implanted down the line, so that we've changed directions, but whoever follows us now in the family tree is following us in the right way.
Yeah, go ahead, Gustav.
Yeah, yes, it is. If we go back to the cognitive dissonance, where your brain, the muscle memory and your brain memory becomes a belief system, where your brain actually believes that you are doing it, although you are not really doing it, and that creates that consonant, cognitive dissonance. You also start to manipulate your habitat to fit in where your brain tells you you should be. So your brain gives you the energy to start to manipulate your habitat. And at the beginning, it is quite difficult. You may see it as almost impossible, but you manipulate it in a way. You don't really necessarily change your habitat, but you manipulate it that it fits you where you want to be. As a simple example, you may sit at home working on Map for Life, and it becomes a habitat. And gradually you start to change your home so that you have a study room where you can sit privately and do your sessions. Or you try to find a place where you can do that, which is finding the habitat that suits you, so that you can do whatever you want to do. So the habitat doesn't manipulate you, but you manipulate the habitat.
Yeah. I think what we're talking about here this evening is change. You know, and somebody said, if you want the world to change, you've got to change. You've got to change. You know, so when you change, the world changes. And I think part of what we're doing this evening is creating an awareness that maybe the way we think, the way we behave, is actually the result of our upbringing or the environment in which we grew up. And now we want to make a change because we have a vision, a dream for the future. Henny used the word for a vision board. He said it's a preview of the future. Is that right, Henny? I've got to remember that. I mustn't forget the preview of the future.
Yeah.
So we have this preview of the future, which ties in with what you're saying, and it's different from where we come from. So to begin to change our behavior and to align it with that vision, I think it's a good thing for us to have these kind of sessions where we're actually talking with other people who have a similar new habitat, one that's different from where they come. They're moving in a new direction, and maybe we can learn from one another and share a few things. And so I think being part of this kind of group is actually quite important in terms of making that change that you've referred to, Gustav. Henny, are you reading some of the comments of you on the...
I am. So Delmarie put something down, 23 words, and she used the word seriously 4 times in there. So she wants to seriously implement the Map for Life methodology. And then
Delmarie, you're not the only one. Everybody wants to do that. So
and then Sankwe said he joined a little bit late. He wants you to just elaborate a little bit on the activators, especially how I can use the activators.
Yeah, I just Sankwe, if you came in a bit late, I was talking about our strategy or approach. And there's something that I realized when I travel to different countries is that when it comes to money, and money is one of those things that everybody's familiar with, especially when you don't have it, I think it becomes very important. And then when you got lots of it, it seems to also be very important. So I'm not too sure at what stage money isn't important in this world. I certainly believe it shouldn't be our God, but it seems to be the God for many people, especially if you take it away from them. So we talk about money, and I said in Zambia, I think that's where you said you're from. You will find there's a currency called kwacha, and I'm sure the kwacha has these same denominations: 1, 2, 5, 10, 20, 50, 100. Well, maybe in Zambia it might be 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, bigger denominations. But the 1, 2, 5 principle is there. And so from a map perspective, when I come to setting myself steps towards a particular goal, I've just used that idea to say, I'm going to first have, my first step is going to be to achieve 1. My second step is going to be to achieve 2. The next step will be to achieve 5, then 10, then 20. So it's just a progressive set of targets that I put down. And on the other hand, is when I use the word activator, I've said to myself, when I reach, like currently as an organization, our next big step is to have 10,000 members. And so that's our next step. When we reach 10,000, then there's going to be a whole bunch of new things that come into play that we're going to be start doing, offering. But until then, I'm not going to worry about those things because they're only needed once we have 10,000 people. And so I use these activators. It's just my little method, and I'm teaching that to all of our coaches and trainers to keep it simple. Just what is the next step? And that's why I talked about activators this evening. I'm trying to think of a practical example. In sales, this is something that people will identify with very easily because they're constantly setting themselves targets. And they would have a process that they follow. Sometimes the organization that they work for sets them targets each month, constantly trying to push them with incentives and different things like that. In Map for Life, you have to be, your vision needs to inspire you. Your vision needs to get you to set these goals and these targets to constantly move forward and to measure your progress. I think I'm going to stop there because it looks like Gustav has something to say about this. He's a strategy man. And so is Henny, by the way. So let's hear your thoughts, Gustav.
Yeah, it looks like Henny. I'm a mechanical and industrial engineer, so there are overlaps also in our thinking. No, the activator. I see the activator. Personally, activators for me are visualizing the end result, which is your vision board, but to actually take the vision board and break it down into shorter term visions, and that you affirm. To me, a vision is just a picture, but to affirm that vision by repeating what I see, and that activates me. I do it on a day-to-day basis. Also, if I visualize the day, what needs to be done and what will happen, and what in terms of the end result, not in terms of the actions. And by visualizing the end result of that day, broken up in sometimes in, say for instance, in a work session or meeting, training session, what do you visualize to be at the end of that training session? What are the results that you visualize? Well, those activate me into actions to get to that end result of that session. For instance, 2-hour session or 4-hour session over day.
I was just, as we were talking about time, Gustav, I was just thinking, in terms of Map for Life, one of the things that we talk about is that when you begin, start by mapping one hour a day. Don't have the goal to have 168 hours of the week fully mapped. Start just with 1 hour a day. Once you've achieved that, then set yourself the next goal to do it for 2 hours a day. And once you've reached that consistently, then go to 5 hours and so on. So it's just it's sort of a step-by-step methodical approach to solving a big problem or a big goal or whatever it might be.
Yes, but you must keep your bigger vision in mind as well.
Absolutely.
Breaking it down. Say, for instance, your let's say you mentioned 160 hours. Your 160-hour vision, breaking it down into your hourlies or your daily, in order to get to the end result. As an example, I'm involved in improving the management of infrastructure. Now, I visualize the improved infrastructure, but then I break it down into the different smaller visualizations in terms of getting there. And that becomes also the daily daily and session visualizations. It's not, in my case, not hourly, but session by session.
Gustav, you're touching on something that's actually there's quite an important aspect of here, because in essence, what we're talking about is the picture that comes to my mind is the process that you follow when you're building a puzzle. To build a puzzle, you're always looking at the puzzle box lid. Now, I say that because usually the picture of the puzzle is on the lid. Okay, so maybe I should say you keep looking at the picture of what the end puzzle is going to be as your motivation. So your motivation is the big picture. But in order for that big picture to become a reality, you've got to do the chore of putting each little puzzle piece in. And so the manifestation of the vision is in the small little steps that you take. The motivation lies with the big picture. So in order to build that puzzle, you have a strategy, and my strategy is like this. I don't know if yours is the same, but my strategy is I tip all the pieces out on the table, and I look for 4 pieces. There's only 4 pieces that I'm interested in, and those are the corner pieces. And once I'm found there, I almost feel like I deserve a night out, a dinner. I want to celebrate it because I'm so excited I found those 4 pieces. And then my next step is to build the frame, so I find all the ones with straight edges and I put them together. And then I group the puzzle pieces in colors. So I have a strategy that I'm going to follow to get to that end picture. But that end picture, that vision that you're talking about, is the thing that keeps me motivated. Sometimes I get bored putting those puzzle pieces in place. So I've got to have little rewards along the way. So, when I've finished the frame around the outside, I deserve an ice cream, especially if I'm building that 18,000 piece puzzle that Henny was talking about a little while ago. So, I say that's so important, keeping that vision crystal clear, really important.
Yes, but talking about the puzzle, you actually visualize smaller parts of a puzzle in terms of say, for instance, you start with your sides and the corners, and then you see, okay, there's one part where, say, are different colors where it's more easy to start off putting a smaller part of a puzzle together, which is a small picture of that part of a puzzle, and those are the smaller visualizations to get to the overall to complete the overall picture.
I like that picture, Henny. You've seen that picture that photograph I took of the elephant bouncing on the ball along the beach there in East London. Well, I'm saying that to you, but I was telling somebody else that it was actually on the beach at Mombasa in Kenya. Of course, it's a Photoshop thing, but Gustav, this is a big gray elephant, and behind is the ocean and the sky that looks the same. But on that puzzle is this beach ball. You know those colorful beach balls, bright yellow and bright red. And so what you're saying now, if I understand you, is that you would actually pick that as one of the little components, and you go and complete the beach ball because it's an easy, quick task. You can see it finished. I think that's a really good idea when we set our goals, is to actually have, also look for not just all the difficult stuff, but pick the nice little things that we can package nicely and get it done and dusted, and we can move on to the next thing. I think it's a really nice approach. What do you think, Henny?
I think so too. I think the key thing coming out of it for me is having the mini victories. You have to put something down on paper, and even if you write it down, if I need to, as an example, and I think you used it before, if I want to get my body in a better shape, if I start off with 5 push-ups today, it might not be a lot. If I do 5 push-ups tomorrow, once again, it's not a lot. But if I look back on Sunday, I've already done 35 push-ups, and if I keep on multiplying that over time, I can say that I've done 1,000 push-ups. It's small little things that you do that adds to a bigger picture. but I think the key thing for me is to create time and space to just celebrate what you're achieving. They say becoming a millionaire is not the big prize. The journey or the person that you become to become that millionaire is the bigger thing. And I think if you start celebrating the small little victories, you as a person starts feeling good about yourself as well. And then success breeds success kind of thing. You just follow on from, well, I can do that. I've been able to do it for 7 days. Why can't I do it now for 14 days? It sort of motivates yourself by just doing small things and writing it down. And even if it's so small and minute, it just adds up. 1 hour a day is nothing until it becomes 30 hours, until it becomes 365 hours. They said if you want to be an expert in the field, you need to spend 10,000 hours to do that. If I just do 1 hour a day in a year, I've already done 365. If I go and double that up, it quickly adds up, and it quickly will take you to your 10,000 hours. So
yeah, Jenny, I'm seeing Rion commenting over here as you're talking, and I'm thinking about Rion does these what is it called, cross country type. Yeah. Rion, tell us what you do. he runs where there is no trail. He kind of makes his own trail. I think he runs through the mountains and does that kind of running, which must be quite a lot nicer than just running along the road where you see the normal kind of things. But I was just thinking about runners. They have a process. Maybe they want to run the Comrades Marathon. And for those of you not from South Africa, you might not be familiar with this particular ultra marathon. It was run recently, and it is close to 90 kilometers. You don't just go and run that race on a whim. You actually prepare for it. You practice, and you might be somebody who's never run before. So you first walk, and then you start jogging, and you might take your first park run of 5 kilometers, and then you do a 10 kilometer, then a half marathon, then a full marathon. So it's this constant progress. And what I loved about when I think back of martial arts, which I was involved in for a number of years, and Gustav, obviously, he's still involved in that field. I don't know if I want to call it, if you call it a sport or it's an art. So let's call it martial art. But what I liked about it was that we had targets or goals in the form of belts. You'd start off, you'd be wearing a white belt. And when you wear a white belt on a white suit, it's like you don't exist. It's like you have nothing. Okay, so you start off at that level, and your objective is to get a black belt. And the black belt is so far away. There's so much that you got to do. They've created little steps. I don't know who did it. Maybe we did it. But because in some places you wear a white belt, and only once you've been there long enough you get your black belt. But there's these little steps. And so the first one was to get a yellow belt, then an orange belt, and so you went through the process, and eventually you got your black belt. But that always kept us engaged. The dream was the black belt, but there was always that next step, a kind of a little reward. And I think this is a useful thing for us to set. And in Map for Life, when you go through the goal setting process, there's a little place there for you where we've called milestones, the little milestone rewards. When I reach this step, I will reward myself this way. And that's important. I think we all need to have those milestones. And I'm not talking about the milestone of retirement. When I get to 65, then I will. No, that's not your milestone. Somebody else has set that. Yes, Gustav?
Yeah, there's just one thing also on the activator. When you sometimes visualize the end result of a session, you actually become sometimes fearful of what you need to reach, not knowing how to get there. For instance, I have a 4-hour work session and I want to reach a certain vision, and I have no idea how to get there. And that activates you also to get help, to phone your colleague or to involve somebody that has got the knowledge to assist you to get to that. But if you haven't visualized that, you wouldn't have realized that, or you would have given up and said, "Okay, sorry, I cannot do this." And I think that is why it's also important that we in Map for Life also become members of teams where we support each other, where another person can help you through those fearful sessions where you don't really have an answer to get to your vision or to get to what you want to reach.
We need a think tank night.
Yeah,
I think
so it's also so it's also an activator. Sorry for that.
Yes, I just like that idea. You know, we kind of have a panel of the sages, the wise ones, the ones who've been through some deep water and have got some answers to just answer questions. Because I think, you know, like Sankwe asked us a question this evening. I think that there's actually value in having some kind of think tank like that. I love that idea. Thanks, Gustav. You know, we've been enjoying ourselves so much and not realizing that we've been streaming for over an hour already. So for those of you who've joined us this evening, trail running. Thank you, Rion. Trail running. I knew it would come to me eventually. Just thank you for speeding up the process. Trail running must be quite exciting, I think. It takes you out into the wild, and when you get lost, there's no one to ask for direction. You've got to kind of follow your nose, Arion. But trail running must be quite enjoyable. Just a last word quickly from each of you, and let's end the show. Henny, from yourself?
Let me end with a quote again. I always wondered why somebody didn't do something about it. And then I realized that I am somebody. So go and do something about it. You are somebody.
I love that. Gustav?
Yeah, I can just say visualize and affirm your vision, and that will create the energy and become the activator also.
Guys, thank you so much for joining this evening, and I think that together we have engaged minds in terms of our audience, and I'm sure they are thinking about things that they haven't maybe given time to in the past, and hopefully we've helped them to solve one of the things that they've been daunted by. Thank you so much for joining this evening. We'll see you same time, same place every Wednesday and every Thursday evening. And if you'd like to join and be part of the studio, we'd love you to give us a call, send me a WhatsApp. You've got my details. It's on the website. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening further. Good night, Gustav. Good night, Henny.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks. The best.
Bye-bye.
Muy buenos días a todos. I am Miguel Sanz from Madrid, Spain. I started using Map for Life back in 2016, where this picture here, where I am with Glen, belong to that year in the training I did in Pretoria. And you know, there are many talks, many talks out there in internet, in real life, where great speakers tells you that you are unique, that you need to find your purpose, what you need to do in life. You end up out of those talks really happy, but naked, because you have no tools. What's Map for Life? Map for Life gives you the tools to achieve your goals, to be precise, to do all the things you need to do to achieve them. You are unique.